Ahsoka, Balance of Truth, Book 1, Chapter 30. Captain, the acquisition has vanished from scopes, a uniformed tech advised from his bay. Sighed, all but ran over to the position, descended the steps to the pit itself, and looked. He had been on Star Destroyers and the like long enough to have heard fellow commanders and captains disregard slivers of information, musings from the pit crews, and general speculation, only to have those slivers prove their downfall. Well done, Rand. Lieutenant Rand, Side corrected himself. The young man had worked hard for the promotion. Although no Star Destroyer, his IGV 55 was ever reliant on the most basic slivers of information imaginable. Very few of his compatriots ever understood his insistence on using the surveillance cruiser as his command ship, but they didn't command the Emperor's silent fleet. Side could not have cared in any event. Maintain silence and retrace trajectory. There's a reason we're here and not the executor, Side said, patting the young lieutenant on the shoulder. Bev, what have you got for me? He turned his head toward the next bank of stations. With a finger raised in silence, Bev nodded to her fellow techs, then clamped a hand on the lone earpiece she adorned to continue her surveillance while updating her captain. Silence, sir. Cosmic wake and flare black backlash only. Hang on. She raised the finger again. Never mind. Seismic kickback planetside. Nothing after the flare. She focused on the console before her junior tech and rotated a large dial. A static hum resounded through the ship, followed by a clunk. Reorientation of Dish 3 should be straight on target, sir. Bev raised the other earpiece to the opposite side of her head and shut her eyes to cut off any interfering senses. Side watched patiently as her head seemed to dance to a song only she could hear, starting and stopping in a tight infinity loop. Quickly, she jerked her head violently and tore the hearing aids from her head. Lock on that vector tie. Side, still watching with great interest, learned long ago that hand-picked officers were at their best left alone. He let Bev follow her intuition to its conclusion. Ty rapidly coded the vector, angle, and exact location of the interruption into a wire mesh grid on the hollow image before him, triangulating between their location, the relay station planet side, and small emplacement on the planet's solitary moon. We should have that target within a few meters, sir, Bev alerted her captain. At 200 thou km distant, that would be a lucky shot, Bev. Any thoughts on closing the distance? Side asked. Anyone present? Launch a trio of probes, fitted for reflective reverb, toward the target tangential to the last known position. In essence, triangulate within the triangulation. It would reduce our target area by, the tech who spoke up tapped his neuro implant lightly, 73%, sir. It would, in effect, give them our position as well. Bev, what was the interruption? Side looked back at the comm officer for her reply. Sounded like screaming, sir, she replied without hesitation. Perhaps they've powered down then, Ensign. We'll go ahead with your suggestion, he decided. Chew, instruct the bay to ready 3 probes. Ref-reb maximized and launch when ready. Pritcar, nice work. You'll have primary control of the navcon when it's released. His attention shifted from the female ordnance officer to the junior analyst. This is how we get results where others only enact failure, he thought, proud of their efforts. Side could feel the launch shortly after Jew notified the ordnance bay crews. Pit, probes away. You have the con, he said. Affirmative, running true, Pritcar said in return. The entire room fell silent as Pritcar closed his eyes. Concentration was required for the task, and none was better. He waited patiently for the tones he knew were coming, listening to all 3 probes simultaneously. He heard probe 2 receiving reverberating feedback and listened for the crescendo. Finally, the affirmative chime of acquisition sang its dulcet tones. Pritcar pounding his finger to the console before him. Mark 2, positive lock. He angled the trajectory of the final 2 probes to arc closer to probe 2's last known position, and subsequently heard the confirming chimes and affirming tones from the other 2. Mark 1, Mark 3, positive lock, Pritcar said. Bev, fire tracker, Side said immediately. A dull thud resonating throughout the ship was all the confidence he needed that this was indeed the perfect crew. They all waited, watching the central monitor in the room as the tracker salvo carried video monitoring for guidance. An offset screen to the left showed trajectory, computing angles, and displays of the triangulation vector points. A screen to the right displaying a rear mount surveillance cam of the payload. Some watching as their own vessel shrank to nothingness in the view. Within seconds, the primary screen showed a centuries-old ship's hull and retracted trio of armament wings. Kuwati D5 Mantis, patrol vessel, heavy armament. No signal, no ping, and unregistered. Another junior tech spoke up before the main screen displayed impact and static. The image faded to black within seconds. Well done, everyone, Side commended his crew. Although seemingly mundane, their efforts, were always noticed. Ahsoka, holding Kawani closer to herself, was vigorously rubbing the Mirialan's right arm as she began to muster under her grip. "Oh, thank the stars," she said, wiping a tear from her free hand. "I don't feel so good," Kawani stammered, the words in obvious torment as she covered her stomach with her hands. "Just breathe, Ani, in and out. That's it," she said, feeling Kawani's breath, following the suggested pattern. "Look at me," she instructed, lifting her chin with her finger. "You got it," Kawani continued to struggle. "I think we're stuck together," she answered the unanswered question. He tried to free himself, to seek out something. She paused briefly. "But I don't think he can leave now." Ahsoka understood the implications and assumed the worst. "Ani, that can't be healthy, dare I say it, for either of you." "You're probably right," Kawani agreed. "Not much to be done for it, though." She finished with a short laugh and resultant coughing fit. "Great, you haven't lost that stellar sense of humor," Ahsoka said, lightly punching Kawani in the shoulder. "Can you move?" "I think so," she said, fidgeting her hands around the harness. "Zero-G won't help much, though." "Right, about that. If there were indeed a vessel here, they would have already scanned our area after decanting. Should be safe to power back up to minimal," Ahsoka stated, swiveling her gaze outward through the canopy. Kawani didn't object, but Ahsoka froze with her hand above the central control as she heard a soft thud resound through the hull. Kawani heard it too, and they both swiveled to look behind them. "Power's down, therefore shields down. Debris?" Kawani suggested. "Possibly, but assume the worst," Ahsoka answered. "Take me back to Dagobah." Ahsoka turned back to the Mirialan. "What? Why?" Kawani laughed despite herself. "It's the only place we've landed and taken off from without destroying something in the process." Ahsoka shook her head and played to take another swig at her shoulder, but pulled herself into the aft section of the cockpit. "With power down, we won't be able to open the door either." "Nor should we. It'll be depressurized, which doesn't matter, but freezing, which does," Kawani said. "As you said, assuming the worst, we are now being tracked." She lowered her voice to a whisper. Why would that matter? And how is it assuming the worst?" Ahsoka asked in a whisper of her own. "Given that we're still alive, that worst-case scenario is nullified. If we're not dead, there's a reason. Given our location, that reason is Imperial. Common sense fills in the rest." Ahsoka did not retort. "Okay, I'll buy that. If we're being tracked, power isn't an issue. If we remain powered down, suspicions may arise, and that gives me another idea." "Oh, come on, Ahsoka." Kawani inflected sincere sorrow. Ahsoka turned to her with a quizzical look. "I like this ship," Kawani said too quickly for Ahsoka to say anything. Her hand ran over to the co-pilot navigation gear. "We haven't been powered down too long to draw too much suspicion, and we could make it look unintentional," Ahsoka said, her tone still hushed. Rolling her eyes, Kawani added, "And effect, line us up with one of those fiery tributaries, destroy the evidence." Ahsoka didn't hide her smile. "Perfect." "What's the status, Bev? Anything?" Side asked his comm officer. Bev had recorded what audio was available, muffled and warped as it was. "By intuition, they know they are being monitored on some level," Bev said. "To what degree is unknown. Nothing articulated through speech. Linguistic analysis working, sir." "They?" Side fired the question and snapped his head around to focus on the most senior member of the crew. 2 humanoids registering 36.7 IR average. Power down 0 LS. An electronic vocator announced through relays at a crewless station toward the room's rear. Only one target was expected. 2, although uncomplicated, represented a change to what had been perceived. Side confided in himself alone. 07, apprise if there is a change and notify of any quick movements. Affirmative, the electronic voice responded. Your move, Mantis, Side said, staring at the right screen and the space within. Rapid engagement of sublight will get us there quickly. We'll have to cut them just as quickly. Angle rotation, dump fuel to light up the sky, then engage repulsors with precision to buy us the time to get off this thing. Ahsoka relayed the plan. This is insane, Kawani said, but having no other grand ideas, she defaulted to Ahsoka on how best to crash a ship. She had managed to get herself back to Vindal after all, alive. Is there time to steal into bunk rooms to see what I can put together for supplies? Kawani asked. Yeah, but make it quick, and hold on to something. It will be a bumpy ride. Kawani shook off any feeling that had remained from Zar's attempted exit and powered up the ship as quickly as she could. Ahsoka flipping switches just as quickly to reduce downtime. She watched the blinking green light with anticipation as it stopped blinking altogether. She fired from her seat and headed for the cockpit door control on the wall beside it, slamming her palm into it without stopping. The door hissed and shot open as she rushed through it. Slow down, will you? Vertigo was not on the menu today, Zar's voice rang in Kawani's head. Good to know you pulled through, after all. That. What was that? I should have been able to drift free, Kawani. I apologize. Pain was not intended, Zar replied. Kawani, despite severe cramping in her lower legs, was deftly searching rooms for anything resembling supplies. No need to apologize if you didn't know. We'll figure that out later. For now, I am thrilled you're still here, she said, illuminating the third room she'd come across. Hello there, she said out loud. Zar said nothing, but Kawani could feel a sense of awe. That is a lot of explosives, he said flatly. What are we doing that would necessitate all that? Well, after we crashed the ship, Kawani paused. Truthfully, I have no idea. But explosives can't hurt, right? You had better grab the med packs on the other wall too, after an answer like that, Zar added. Let me rephrase the question in a way that truly reflects my concern. What are we doing? More rhetorically, why not just land the ship? Whoever stirred this much panic would surely have moved to destroy the vessel outright, if that was indeed the goal. No, we are permitted to land this craft on Mustafar. Whatever part of the agenda that follows cannot be foreseen, but use logic, my young friend. Kawani stopped stuffing thermal detonators into a duffel she had found under an unkempt bunk and chimed her comm. Ahsoka, she said. Yeah? She heard the response from her wrist comm and the open walkway to her right. Ahsoka, just land the damn ship. Zara is right. If they were going to kill us, they would have already. She said into her comm and over her shoulder, shouting her voice back into the hall beyond the door. A silence hung between all three of them for a few moments before Kawani finished stuffing the duffel and cursed inaudibly as she slung it over her shoulder, then eyed the med pack seated on inlaid shelves on the opposite side of the room, and with a sigh moved to grab those too before leaving the room. She set the heavy bag down on top of the ramp and headed into the fourth and final room. Again, her mouth dropped as she hit the illuminator. They were prepared for a war, Zar intoned what Kawani thought simultaneously. SE-15, A-180, K-16 Briar, E-403. Zar, look at all the power cells. And on that wall, Kawani said aloud, pointing to the opposing wall. Arm and shoulder guards of all shapes and sizes lay underneath a wide array of tactical helmets. Rangefinder and broadband antenna mounts? Zar? Mandalorians? She switched from all-out speech to thought. Not that I was aware of. These may be spoils, if you will, he responded. Kawani shrugged and began looking for another bag to stuff, the pain from earlier entirely out of her mind. Ahsoka is calling, Zar said. Kawani barely heard the voice over her heartbeat and increasing excitement. She stuck her head out of the door. Yeah? What did you say earlier? Ahsoka asked. You didn't hear? Ugh. She sighed and stopped what she was doing to walk back to the cockpit. Ahsoka, just land the ship, she repeated moments earlier. They would have attacked already if they intended to. Besides, it's Mustafar. Getting onto the planet isn't the problem. Do you know where you're headed anyway? I guess that makes sense, Ahsoka said with a shrug. I have kind of grown fond of the ship, to be honest. Oh, you'll find a way to destroy it, Ani said with a jeering laugh. Ahsoka shot her a mocking grin over her shoulder. Southern Hemisphere, old slagging and refining station. There was extensive damage done to the place, though, and I am not sure it is still there, but it's a start. Kawani lost interest in everything instantly: the thermal detonators, the arsenal, Tsar, and even the mission. What kind of damage? When? How? She asked, with what Ahsoka thought the hardened edge of a war tested general. The place was set to an automated destruction as soon as we were detected, Ahsoka stated. The past rushed back into the present for Kawani, and her eyes flew open. Just like Kino, she whispered. Sorry, what? Ahsoka asked, turning around fully to face the Mirialan. Just like Kino, Ahsoka, Simfar, and Danth. Others. She trailed off, her words mingling into the brackish muddle her mind had instantly become. She sat right down on the deck plating of the cockpit, mentally listing all the souls she had known in her facility, the countless others that were lost to the tragic workings of lunacy at the facilities that she did know of, and how many others she hadn't. Ahsoka, I spoke of Kino. It was only because we were one of the first liberated. Other facilities, Simfar, Danth, were on a simultaneous strike. I know, Ani. It was my plan. I gave the orders, Ahsoka admitted. It was a different time, and we had to get as many of you out as possible. But no one could have anticipated the lengths of the Emperor would go to maintain secrecy. They ended similarly, and we abandoned the efforts right after Yagal. Yagal, Kawani repeated, and she remembered. All hands lost, no survivors, no rescues, not even Imperial. What could be so important, Ahsoka? What could be worth that many lives? The question relieved Ahsoka. She had never told her friend about her role in those endeavors, although that point had never seemed worth knowing. She felt relief in knowing that Kawani would have done the same. That is precisely why we are here, Ani. So this has nothing to do with Anakin at all, Kawani said, intending it to be a question, but answering herself in the process. Not at all, just like I said. Ahsoka looked at her with that same smile again. That damn smile, Kawani thought, feeling her own smile peel her out of a rigorous husk she had become on the floor. I've grown rather fond of it, personally, Tsar said. Shut up, Kawani said. What? Ahsoka replied, looking confused. Not you, Kawani responded, shaking her head. Let's go save some lives, Ani, Ahsoka said, extending a hand to help her friend. Hell yes. Oh, there's enough firepower back there, Kawani said enthusiastically, a thumb cast over her shoulder, to stage one major offensive. Ahsoka placed a hand on Kawani's left shoulder. Kawani mirrored the gesture, and the two nodded to one another before the Mirialan rushed out of the room to burden herself with as much as she possibly could. Ahsoka returned to the pilot's seat and finally looked beyond the canopy's view as the vessel breached Mustafar's atmosphere, contrailing plumes of choking smoke rising with fury from the surface below. She pulled her eyes tight with resolve and began looking for the old station she knew was still there. Please consider a like and sub. It is YouTube's way of getting these to more people. I am less concerned with subs as I am with getting the story out there, and I need your help to do that. Thank you.